Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is Malcolm X and the Black Liberation Movement. And we have to talk about Malcolm X and the Black Liberation Movement, Alana McLaughlin. Alana has been with us on many occasions, and I'm sure that she's no stranger to members of our audience this morning. Alana, let me welcome you to the show, as well as to give you an opportunity to talk about some of the activities that you've been involved in since you were with us the last time. I think that you started with us as a youngster of 8 years old, and you've been with us almost consistently since. And I would imagine that many members of our audience are probably amazed to see you now, knowing that you've moved quite a bit through this show since you were 8 years old. Let's talk about your background, education, and other information that might be able to enlighten our audience as to who you are this morning, Alana.
Well, like you stated, my name is Alana McLaughlin. I am an 8th grader at John Early Middle. I am heavily involved in many organizations, and I go to many camps and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I am heavily involved in my church. My school, for instance, I was a cheerleader. I'm in the band. I was a part of the Metro Nashville Public Schools Honor Band, and many other organizations of that. And like I said earlier, I'm in the band. I play trumpet and piano. And so basically, I've always had a knack for helping people, I guess, and it's fitting because my father's a nurse, and so I'm always doing community service and helping my neighborhood, like offering tutoring in the summer for some of my peers or some of my neighbors, and etc. And always trying to help the world to the best of my ability.
Very good. And Alana, let's talk about some information in reference to the topic that we're dealing with, Malcolm X and the Black Liberation Movement. I think we've got about half of this segment to sort of give a foundation for the Malcolm X and the Black Liberation Movement. How would you approach that, and how are you planning on dealing with this today?
Well, when you're talking about Malcolm X or the BLA, which is the Black Liberation Army, well, same thing, you really have to sit and think about how you want to approach it, because this is such a sensitive topic. For instance, I almost said Martin Luther King. Malcolm X lost his life for not the BLA, but for his views and etc. And so when we chose this topic, I really had to sit and think, how do I want to go about this? How do I want to portray a man who was loved and hated at the same time? Like, he is unlike any other civil rights leader. For instance, Martin Luther King, he always had praise, and he was known for being loving and peaceful. Malcolm X was the polar opposite. He was known for his eccentric personality and diverting to violence when talking it out wouldn't work. And so it took a lot, and it took a lot of patience and really sitting down and deciding, how do I want to go about this? How do I want to portray a man who was crazily brilliant? And I finally figured out that I'm going to portray him to the best of my ability, and I'm going to praise him when praise is due, and I'm going to point out some of the faults that he had, because there were many. And in talking about the Black Liberation Army, I'm going to give the blunt truth about the bombings and the killings that they did, and that's the only way I can go about it, really.
And so you've got quite a bit of information. What about Malcolm X? Who was Malcolm X in terms of, I know that many people talk about his autobiography, the autobiography of Malcolm X, but give us some little information over the next couple of minutes in terms of his background.
Malcolm X, born Malcolm Little in 1926. He was a husband, a father, a minister, a civil rights activist, a deeply religious man, but also a man who had, who wanted things to go his way. Like, for instance, in 1946, the first time he was ever arrested, he went to jail for larceny and for breaking and entering. And this is when Malcolm X, when Malcolm Little at the time really discovered himself, and he decided that he was going to make an impact on the world, and believe me, he did. He's one of the most influential figures in American and African American history to this day, years and years after his death. So.
And so in dealing with Malcolm X, and you use the name Malcolm Little,
that's his birth name,
which was his birth name before he became Malcolm X. Why did he decide over the next half minute? Why did he decide to change his name from Little to and put the X behind his name?
I don't know the exact reason of why, but if you're wanting to become a strong and you want someone to respect you, a name like Malcolm Little isn't going to get you far. Okay. So I can see why he changed it.
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll take this first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Okay, now the next segment, we've got 8 minutes. Yeah. What do you want to talk about?
Malcolm X, and I'm ended off with comparing the BLA to like the NAACP.
Okay, that sounds good. And so when we start back, we've got 8 minutes, and you're going to start talking about whatever. Yeah. And so you think
you threw me off. Call me off guard.
Well,
no, but it's okay. You cool.
Okay.